Skype, so if you can't make it to the physical meeting, you can always Skype into our meetings.
So, thank you, Dave. So, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. This is one of our events that we are organizing throughout the quarter. We're honored to have here Mr. Watson. I'm gonna properly introduce him. And yeah, thank you for coming. Feel free to take a slice of pizza if you're ready to drop. And this is an effort for us to bring such personalities here to us to talk into what is there in the real world business. We're all studying here our MBA degree or business economics area. So the idea is for us to get a real insight of what is happening out there, like besides we have all our classes going on, the academia tells one thing and the books telling on that sort of ideas, but having here a person that has real face into what are the real problems have arisen and has a history in the business area. He's going to be talking to us about his own experience, his pathway through the business, economic, real estate business area. And feel free if you have any type of questions or any doubt or on any specifics. We're gonna make this more interactive way, and it's gonna be for 35 minutes approximately. And then if needed, we're gonna have like a 10-15 minutes Q&A. I know we all have class at 6, so we'll make it at that time. We'll stick to the time. So let me make the proper introduction to Mr. Watson. If I don't cover it here, some of you don't know, he's a very active member here at Cal State San Bernardino. He actually is one of the, or if I'm afraid not to get wrong on this, but if not the biggest donor here at the university. Having this philanthropy approach and in the business area, it's very important. Depending on the country that you guys come from, myself from Mexico, we don't have that philanthropic approach, even though we have a very growing, wealthy business. It depends merely on the culture itself. So that's something that I applaud here from the United States. So Junior Watson and Associates Development Corporation was founded in 1972 by James R. Watson, President and CEO. Before forming the company, Mr. Watson received a Bachelor of Science degree in Real Estate Finance from San Jose State, after which he spent in 1967 through 1971 as Chief Real Estate Appraiser and Director of Real Estate and Downey Savings and Loan. Since its inception, the company has focused on high-quality, community-sensitive development of mixed-use, residential, retail, and office complexes exceeding $1 billion in market value, with more than 35 developments in California, Oregon, Idaho, and Washington. Junior Watson and Associates Development Corporations prides itself on consistently developing projects that set a new high standards for the community aesthetic. Residential projects by Junior Watson and Associates Development Corporation integrate the environment and sense of community into warm, inviting living spaces. The company has also developed over 1 million square feet of neighborhood, downtown, and specialty shopping centers that reflect this sensitivity to community needs. Furthermore, Junior Watson Associates Development Corporation has completed over 25 redevelopment projects throughout Southern California. In 2010, James R. Watson received an honorary doctorate of humane letters from California State University, San Bernardino, California, in recognition for his many accomplishments and for his and his wife, Judy Watson's extensive contributions to the university and the community. Judy was also recognized as one of the university's most ardent supporters of art and education with the naming of Public Art Project after Mrs. Watson. The Judy Rodriguez Watson Public Art Project enables art students to create public art for display art at designated sites at CSUSB, the surrounding community, and around the city of San Bernardino. Please give an applause. Thank you for So I'll leave now the stage to Mr. Watson.
I'm going to take my jacket off. I'm a little bit warm. It's truly my honor that you've asked me to come today to speak, and it's going to be very extemporaneous, and you feel free to interrupt me at any time and ask questions. But before I start, I want to tell you something that I'm very proud about my wife. It was just announced today by Dr. Morales that my wife is receiving an honorary doctorate in But anyway, I'm going to start with where I've had a career that started way back. My father died suddenly when I was 6 years old. He'd been in real estate for a couple of years, farmers before that. My mother didn't have and never worked. She was 44 years old. So she said, well, I'm going to try real estate. And through the years, through my childhood, of course, we were all concerned, were we going to have enough money to make it? And so I was, always asking her, did you get that listing? Did you make that sale? A lot. And I genuinely became interested in the market, even pre-10 years old. By the time I'm 12 or 14, also, I'm saving all the money I can get. There's a joke about me that I'd get $1, I'd jump on my bicycle and take it down to the savings bank, which is a true story. But in any event, that's when $1 was worth at least $5 today. But in any event, when I was 15, I'd been asking my mother, she had been buying and selling houses, and on the side with her brokers. So I said, let me go in with it, let me go in. So when I was 15, I bought my first house with my mother. We sold it in less than, we closed escrow, selling it in less than a month. I made $500. So, that was, I already was not surprised at that. But then I went to college. I got out of college and I bought 2 houses and a vacant lot in a total ghetto. It was in Paramount. And so I paid $9,600 with $600 down. And the seller carried the paper. It would have been impossible to get any kind of bank financing on this junk. And so I spent about another $1,000 and then a lot of sweat equity. Over the next year, I fixed the house, one of the houses up, and sold it for $10,600. And then I had enough money to, at that time, the freeway was going through, so houses were being moved out of the path of the freeway. You could buy the houses and you could move them. So I moved a house on the vacant lot. It cost me total $6,000, all fixed up. Sold it for $16,500. So that gave me a real start, and then over the next few years I bought more and more. There was a few more houses in that ghetto. So it made, by my standards at the time, it was quite profitable. During the same time, I became a real estate appraiser, and then in '67, when I was 27, I became chief appraiser and director of real estate. After a few months, the president asked me, would I like to develop a shopping center? And I said, Mr. McAllister, I don't know anything about shopping centers, but you tell me what to do and I'll do it. Over the next 4 years, he was the brains, I was the gopher, and we had an attorney working half-time on it, and we made more money each year than the entire association did put together. And so it was very profitable. But also what I was doing was I was continuing to buy and sell real estate. I built 2 apartment houses with his brother. The president knew everything I did completely. I'd come in fact, he was really a mentor to me. So I'd come in and brag about this other deal. But I was still doing a fantastic job for them. And, but in, well, I'll tell you, there are so many different things I did. I've never had a consistency in my business. So in about 1969, I was at Thanksgiving, and my brother-in-law's parents, they owned a 16-unit apartment house in Southgate. They'd been trying to sell it. I knew that they'd been trying to sell it for a few years. And so they said, Jimmy, do you know how we can sell this building? So I asked him, okay, well, and I just sat down, you know, on a little sheet of paper, what's the income, what's this, what's your loan on it, what's the interest rate? And they've been trying to sell it for 160. So I said, I can get you 165 for that. They've been selling it through real estate brokers. Listed it, couldn't sell it. So I'm going someplace with this in a moment. And anyway, so what happened is I called a friend of mine, actually had become a roommate of mine, and I said, do you know anybody that would want to buy, you can sell this apartment house to? It shows a 14% return to a buyer with 10% down. And so he said, yeah. 2 days later, he calls me on the phone. He says he'll buy it. He'll buy every other apartment house that you can come up with meet the criteria. I'm going to tell you the criteria in a minute. So we sold in 1970 when we sold probably more apartment houses than Coldwell Banker in Orange County. Why? Because you could not get any financing. At that time, the financing, they would have these apartments in the case of my, you know, my distant relatives. They had like a 5.5% loan. But if you go in and you sell the property, then the lender wants 12 or 14% at that time. And no deals work at that. But from my early experience, I had no compulsion, even though I worked for a savings loan, to figure out how to go around that. So I came up with a concept, or I actually had the concept already because I'd done it before, where we'd leave the loan on the property and we would record a memo, not a closing of sale, but it's a sales pending. And then it clouded the title. The buyer had marketable title, and the seller, you know, carried a second trustee. So the seller was getting like about an 8 or 9% return on his equity, and the buyer was getting 14% or 15% on his 10% down. All because we left the loan on it at 5.5%. Now, the lender would always pick up recordings, and so we didn't record a sale. The other way they pick it up is the insurance policy. You get a new insurance policy, all of a sudden, wait a second, this is not the owner. So what you had to do was have 2 insurance policies. One that the seller kept, we got a new one for the buyer. Now that may sound a little bit on the shady side. It's not at all. I mean, I thought it was outrageous that these lenders would make these deals and then screw the public when they came back in. And besides, nobody could sell any property. So I told my boss about it, Mac at this time, and I said, Mac, look at this deal I just put together. And he got really excited. Now he's president of a savings loan. So he says, and chairman, he says, Jim, that's great. That's how I'm going to sell my Fontana shopping center. I've been trying to sell it for years. But then he said to me, don't ever do this to Downey. I said, Mac, I'm never going to do it to Downey. But I had all these brokers that I knew, and they just send me, you know, properties to sell so I could go through them. So that's just a little, but the point of the thing is that there's so many different ways you can make money. Now, my whole profession and experience has been mostly all real estate, although I'm very interested in all kinds of things. So I resigned after 4 years, set up my own company, as you heard, in January of '72. I didn't have enough equity there to develop shopping centers on my own, so I had equity partners. That lasted, and I continue to have equity partners or investors for a good 3 or 4 years. I developed about, you know, over the years, about 35 shopping centers and many other type of properties. So generally people, smaller developers, like they kind of stick to one thing, like shopping centers or housing or whatever. I did a variety of shopping centers, building tracts, apartment houses, still bought and sold, built custom homes, and so there was strength and weakness in that. The weakness is, and these things apply to all types of business. The weakness is that it's awfully hard to become a real expert and be completely current at all times when you're not totally focused on that one segment. But the strength of it is that when something is not doing well, and it always has been that way, sometimes shopping centers are not doing well, but housing is, or vice versa. Sometimes nothing's doing well. So, which we've had that. Well, anyway, I did quite well, and in about 1978, I think, oh my God, we're running into problems. I had 23 shopping centers under development at the same time at that time. So, in any event, Why did I think we're going to have problems? Because the economy was doing great. Everybody was busy as heck. There wasn't any bad signs particularly. But when I go to the shopping center events, every single shopping center guy I would talk to had 5 or 6 or 7 projects he was developing. And you're talking to 20 different shopping centers. We're all developing all these products. There's not enough tenants. You know, there's not enough people to fill, these shops. And I'm looking at it and thinking, this has got to crash. So you can say this about any kind of, it relates to any kinds of business. So what I did is in 77 or 78, I'm not going to make another deal. 1980 hits, interest rates go, prime goes to 21%, and mortgages on, you couldn't even, mortgages were like 14 or 15%. No shopping center deal, no residential deal makes sense with interest rates above 12 or 13 or 14%. So I have all these projects that weren't completed. And if I, though, had not stopped and done maybe one more deal, had put one more straw on my back, I probably would not made it. But in any event, I went through this first recession. Only 10%, this is my first experience with it, only 10% of developers and related businesses survived in one of these recessions. That happened in 80, 85, 1995, and also this last time. So the lesson out of this for everybody here is if you're in a field that economy is good in that particular business, it's relatively easy to make money. If you know what you're doing, if you have the technical skills, if you have either the money or know where to get the money. And it's not that hard, relatively speaking. In other words, 100 developers and builders and everybody else made a lot of money in good times. When the stock market is doing great, everybody thinks they're a genius. No, they're not. These developers are not geniuses, and neither are the stock market guys. It's your boat is floating with it, but also it goes the other direction. So what happens is in 80, 85, it got really bad. I had for me, a significant net worth. I went down to 0, negative, or maybe a little positive by 82 or 89. But my banks stuck with me. And so by the 85, I don't know exactly, I'd have to think it through, but I came out in 85, I came out with about the same net worth that I started. Going down to 0, I backed up in 85, the end of the recession. So then, now times are great in 85. And you could see there was a saying out there, stay alive until 85, because you knew that it was going to get really good if you would just survive through this. This was the same thing in 90 and 95. Different this last time. And I'm talking about primarily real estate. So what happened is I do really good. My net worth goes up 5.5 times by 1990. And 90, I could see this coming about a year ahead. So I started, I stopped doing anything new, trying to, get my financing in order. But still, when you're doing a development, these things take, from the time you start them, 2 and 3 years. So you can't get out fast enough. It's not like selling stock that you're out the next day. So again, I went all the way down to 0. 95, I had about probably 25%. And it took me until 2000 to get back up to where I was in 90. So now going forward, this last time, during this time I'm in developing, during this time, then I go to 2007. Now I'm really doing really well. So I go all the way to 2000, but I saw this coming again. And I could go, if you were interested, I could tell each why you could tell ahead of time. But it's like people are oblivious, they just, and I'll say why they're oblivious, in my opinion. But anyway, in 2000, I went to my banks and I said, I think this is going to get really tough. I'd like to finance everything and increase my lines of credit. If I'd waited 3 months, I would not have gotten any loan approved, because my bankers couldn't have gotten them approved. So that carried me through. I also had a meeting with my staff, and I said, this is going to be really ugly. It ended up being worse than I expected. I mean, this was really a bad one. But I was fortunately in better shape. So I told my staff, I said, look, here's the goal. If I don't lose more than 40% of our net worth, I said, I'm going to be really happy. So 5 years later, I meet with them and I said, we had done well. We only lost 34%. Now, in a way, I looked at it, that what you're doing while you're losing money is really you're kind of making money. You're reducing your losses. It's kind of a funny way to think about it. But if you aren't trying to, you cannot, you're going to lose money during these times. So you got to figure out how to manage your losses. And so in a way, you can have psychologically fool yourself and say, I'm actually making money. Well, you are to a certain extent. But you've got to manage it. Now there's the, so now I'm back, and I've been out of this about 3 years, and I think next year, so about 8 or 9 years, it's going to take me to get back where I was in 2007. I laugh about it because it's, you know, I've done far better than I ever thought I would, and it's, I kind of, as I told my controller when we're running into some real cash issues right now because of all the projects we're doing, he's sweating and I'm saying, look, we'll figure this out. And I said, Jan, I must be sick in my head. I actually like this. So, but going to Las Vegas, I won't gamble a quarter. It's just, you know, at least in my business, I feel like I have some more control. And so here right now, what I'm doing is we're developing, or I'm developing the Glen across, we've got 520, 1 bedroom, 1 bath. We'll end up with about 600 student housing beds because of some doubling up. We're going to do an 18,000 square foot shopping center in the corner. We're going to build 64 homes. I'm doing the 64 homes in partnership with a builder. The others, we're just doing, the builder's building it for me. Then we have a 33 home project and a 31 home project that I'm also developing I'm the equity partner. So I finally got to the point where I can put the money in other people's deals so they have to get the money. But anyway, and then I have a 315 acre project in Idaho I've had many years. I'm down to about 200 acres. It's residential, industrial, some retail. And so that's basically what I'm doing at this, and there's a few other things I'm doing, but that's the major things of what I'm doing now. Now, there's, you know, I could get into, let me think here. You know, let me tell you, I wrote this down, and I want to tell you what my observations of traits that are generally needed to operate a successful small business. Now, my entire career has been 98% real estate. But this applies, and even a lot of stuff that I've been doing applies to any kind of business. But this applies to general businesses. My observations on traits generally required to operate a successful business, small business, small. This is basic stuff. It's based on my experiences. It's not based on research except for the next item. Persistence, and this I've read, and by my own experience, I believe it to be very true, is the greatest predictor of success. Hard work is next, hard effort. You can do a lot of hard work, but it's slightly different. It's not exactly the same facet of that talent thing. On persistence, when adversity occurs, you just get up and try again. But here's where the key is. You don't want to give up too early because you'll never be successful. But if you have something that's really not doable after you've tried for a while, then look at it and say, you know, you stop and you think about it and you think, is there a different way that I can approach it? Or, you know, or is it just not workable? For instance, I could think that I'd want to be a physicist. I could spend 24 hours a day and I could never be a physicist. So there's certain things that you just won't work, and it applies, you know, you just have to kind of understand I can never be an artist. So persistence, also you have to have the wisdom to say this is just not going to work. So let me not give up on persistence, not give up on hard work, but try something else. Intelligence is required, but for different endeavors, it's like I said before, there's different kind of intelligence that that work, but you have to have at least the minimum adequate intelligence to be successful in whatever you're going to do. A CPA firm is different than a developer, and a restaurant person is different than a CPA and different than a developer. There's general characteristic differences mentally and emotionally. And so you have to know, can you technically learn what you need to do to understand to operate that business? The other thing is, you got to have financing on most everything. When I started, shoot, I had $600. You'd have a hell of a time doing that today. Even if you took the 600, and even if it was worth today, the equivalent would be, that was 60, 50, more than 60 years ago, or almost 55 years ago. That would be $600 would be probably $20,000. Well, that won't get you very far, in a real estate deal. The other, so you need to have the equity. Do you have your own money? Do you have family money? Bank borrowing? Now, this is very tough on a startup business to be able to get bank financing. But once you get bank finances, you want to get it as soon as you can, or a bank relationship. You really want to nurture that relationship. Now, you want to keep in touch with your bank representatives. You want to provide the information they want in a timely and accurate manner. And this is what I've learned, and this is why my banks have stuck with me through 3 recessions. I have never, ever lied to my bank. I always told them ahead of time when I could see that I was getting in trouble. Now, the first time you tell them that, they think, what are you, most anybody, if you came in and said, well, I'm going to have problems in 6 months or 3 months or whatever, what else is he not telling me? Well, I've been with my bank so long that they know that there's nothing else I'm not telling them. I got a problem, but that's what it is. And so we work together. So it's very important to create a credibility. And if a bank finds that you have not been truthful to them or misled them, it almost always mortally wounds the relationship. Investors are a good source. That's one of the major reasons, way I got going, both with equity partners and with family money, and then you do well by them, and you have other people wanting to lend you money. And now I have a situation that I have quite a bit of investor money. The investors don't want me to pay them back, and even though I've had times I want to pay them back, but I have a deep sense of loyalty, and they're actually relying on me for a living. So they're the last people I'm going to pay out, even though they're the highest interest rates that I have. Now, something else that you want to know in your business, you want to know your numbers. Now, by that, you want to know, you look at them, you understand it, the numbers, but you really have to understand the nuances of it. And you can't rely on your accountant, in-house accountant. You can't rely on anybody, because actually it's not their job. It's not their job to understand the nuances of, you've got this money, how do you manage it? How do you develop it? How do you reduce your risk, etc.? They're thinking more, and I've had this problem with I've got very good accounting people, but there's actually a completely different set of thoughts. Their thoughts are, you take it and you put it in the columns, like you guys are taking accounting. That's what you do. And you do it on that format that is well prescribed. But what is the actual deeper meaning of those numbers? And that's what the accountants, and I've never been able to get an accountant that works for me that really understands the ramifications beyond getting it right, the numbers. They don't understand. They can't take it and make money from it. It's just not their mindset. So you have to be aware of it when you're going to do a business. You've got to really understand your numbers. You've got to know it better than your accountants do. And then you have the vision. Then if a business fails, invariably, one of the causes, if not the cause, is poor accounting records. Almost invariably. It might not be the cause, but it's one of the things, because you can't tell, you don't know where you're at. You can't. I can look ahead in my business. I'm a very intensive capital business. Lots of money comes out. Most times, lots of money goes out, and then I'm trying to get it back in. But you have to plan and an accounting, I've never seen an accounting system that can plan for the certainty of something selling in the future, or the certainty of you being able to borrow something. And I've not seen a good system, so I've created my own systems about it. And it's a subjective deal, but it works extremely well. I can look out, well actually I'm out 5 years, but I can look out and within a year to 18 months, I've got a pretty good idea about how much I'm going to need and where I'm at on pretty significant variables, because if I have 20 variables, you know, some of them are going to happen, some of them aren't going to happen, so you sort of mentally average it out. An accountant can't do that. Now, this is something that I don't tell very many people, and I don't know you, but I found it's very important. It's ethics or lack thereof. Now, there's a standard thing in the United States. I don't think this is true, and I don't mean anything demeaning by this. Every culture has their own standards. Every culture has their own way of doing business. You need to understand that, because in some cultures, it's hey, it's good business to screw your son or you screw your brother. I mean, that's the way it is. That's not America. Doesn't mean we're better. It's just different. You got to understand it, though. So, this is what I don't like saying in America. You know, very early on, much to my dismay, despite the folklore that if you have high integrity, you're going to do better. You know, what goes around comes around. Well, within 6 months after I left Downey, I saw all these crooks that were very wealthy. I call them crooks. They were lying, cheat, steal, let me put it that way. And so I had kind of a little crisis, and I thought, I can't, you know, that just doesn't work for me. So, and another thing, in fact, a lack of integrity actually gives an advantage. And a perfect example of that is the Russian mafia or the Italian mafia. You know, they'll kill you, or they'll, you know, so how do you compete with that? But, and the other thing is that people use their, consciously and unconsciously, they use their ethics or lack of it to further their business. You have a business talent, but then you have your ethical side. And consciously or unconsciously, I've never read this anyplace, but I've sure observed it. You use that to further your agenda. Now, I happen to use what I consider, you know, I'm not a priest, but, you know, and when you talk about ethics, you're not expected to lay all your cards on the table. Hey, you're negotiating, that's part of the deal. But I don't lie, cheat, steal. What I represent, I do. Now, what it works for me is, over a long period of time, my banks believe me, I'm probably one of the only developers of not very substantial size that the banks, I'm talking about the banks in California, are stuck with. Because I never screwed them through the tough. So they really go out of their way to pray. So in that case, it really helped me. And the other guys that had shaded it, they didn't survive. So, but I think each person has to make their own decision about how they live that. And certainly no one is perfect, and I'm just talking about a matter of degrees. But the important thing is you need to understand the ethical standards of the person you're dealing with. I mean, you know, I can generally get a fairly good read in a first meeting because I have my little tests that I do that people not even aware I do it. One of the things is I always leave something on the table that I don't have to, and I watch the other person. I wonder if I should be telling you this. Anyway, I watch the other person, and there's these, you know, 10 or 20% of the people, oh, they appreciate it, and then they want to give you something back. 20% of the people, they think you're weak, and so they want to get more. It's like giving red meat to a dog. They just want more and more and more. And then the balance of the people sort of fall in between. And so I just observe that, and then I adjust my behavior. The ones that are trying to steal more, I just, to me, then it becomes a game. Then I can get much tougher. The ones that don't, then I'm actually more generous, and that's just my own mindset. I'm not saying it's for you guys. But you'll see that if you give up something, then you see the way the people respond. And it tells a lot. But, you know, as I said a little bit ago, strong ethical standards should not get in the way of honest, strong, creative negotiation. Another thing that's been very valuable in my life. And I would say this, that I have probably worked at this harder than anybody else I've seen, and I'm very good at it. I am very interested in what the other guy is interested in. Now, all of you should be wanting to ask what their other goals are. People are, they're going to be in various levels of transparency. They're not going to tell you everything, and sometimes a person doesn't even know completely what they want. But to the extent that, and I'm transparent, which helps. So I say, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. And then to the extent possible, I want to know what they want to accomplish. Because if you understand what the other person wants to accomplish, most of the time I can create a better deal for them and not give up anything of myself, give very little that's well worth it to put the deal together. But it's surprising how many times you work with somebody, and if you don't delve into what the other person is, their goals are, and as I said, sometimes they don't even understand. You know, when working through it, they'll come up with, oh, I hadn't thought of that. You know, so it'll help you put the deal together and make it work on a longer time. The other thing is, I'm just going to jump, grinders. You know, grinders and tough negotiators statistically do better. It's not my style. Like, it wouldn't work for me, it doesn't work for me. And I do pretty well with grinders, but one of the things, I just don't deal with them again. So if I'm stuck in a deal with them, then I pull out a variety of techniques to get past that. But one thing with a grinder, and it's true basically of everybody, you gotta have a bottom line sometime. You gotta, this is it, you know. And, you know, that's it. And you gotta be prepared to walk from the table. And, you know, you see this in various negotiating styles, but it's very true. So, survival in tough times. Surviving in tough times, as I touched on a little bit, is far harder than making money in good times. It takes all the traits that you have to make money in good times. You have to have all those traits, and you have to turbocharge them, and you have to work a hell of a lot harder. And you have to be prepared. You're going to be waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning, staring at a ceiling that you can't see, and sweating. In fact, I have a sweat gauge. I haven't had this in a long time, but I could tell how much the stress was by how far my sweat stretched from my toes up to my head. At my knees, it was a certain level, a little bit further, another level, up to my top of my head. That was the most serious. So it was, I kind of would joke that I was a human sweat monitor, but I could, you know, that just goes with the thing. I mean, and now, I'll add something else. I think, I'm kind of jumping here a little bit, but I think we've got, barring an unforeseen disaster, we've got 3 years minimum of a very good economy in many, many fields, real estate and many other fields. I think we've got probably 5, and it could stretch on a little longer, but bad times will come again. I'm talking more in a sense of entrepreneurial, but I'm going to now change it slightly. You always want to think, not in a bad sense, but if you always think, I'm working for myself, you'll be working for a company. You'll probably, in these days, when I was, you know, in the 50s, when I'm being raised, you know, most people had a job, 1 or 2 jobs in their life. Now, you guys will have 1 or 2 jobs a year or whatever. I mean, it's just, this is a way that thing has changed. But if you think that you're always working for yourself, while you're going to school, you're working to improve yourself. If you work for a company and think that you're working for yourself, well, working for yourself is doing the best job you can for your employer, doing a great job for them. If they don't appreciate it, then you are aware of it, and then you can move on. But they can't take your knowledge away from you. They can't take that genuine feeling that I've done my best. They can't take that away. And you really do continue to get better and better and better. So if you just think about it in that sense, that you really are always working for yourself. If you want to think in that concept of, and you're in MBAs, so you're at the high end of people that want to be successful. Whether you want to be an entrepreneur, whether you want to work for a company, or companies, you know, whatever. And in in business, if you're working for a company, used to be not very risky. It is risky now. Layoffs are there. So you always have to be prepared, thinking ahead. When is it going to get bad again in my particular field, and how can I protect myself, and what can I do about it to kind of be aware of it? And it varies from times to times. Now, what I do is I just read a lot, as you guys do. I read Economist, Wall Street Journal, LA Times, the Register. I want both sides of political views. And then I read Scientific American, Discover, and Bloomberg, and The Economist. Economist is one of the best magazines, I'm sure you all know, but that's probably one of the best business magazines that I think is out there. And so if you are well read, then you're able to spot things that are going to change and going forward. And so what I pay particular attention to is interest rate trends. It's where they were. Right now, we are at historically low. We haven't had interest rates this low 50 years. And if you look at the basis of how interest rates, the spreads between, for instance, a treasury and a mortgage, or a LIBOR and the spread, or inflation rate and LIBOR. Usually there's a 2% difference between inflation, or approximately that, and LIBOR. Right now we got a 0.18 LIBOR. So you look at this, all of our interest rates are not only historically low, they're very low based on the standards that normally set those rates. So what does it mean? Without a doubt, rates have got to go up. And it's not if, it's when. And we all sort of know that. And it's how much. I mean, we have a lot of things that are forcing our interest rates down and probably will stay in effect for quite a while. A lot of things that do it. But it'll eventually go up. Now, am I out of time? Oh, I'm out of time. So, let me do this. I could keep going. And I hope I haven't bored you too much. But do you have questions?
Well, you mentioned when you were doing the shopping centers. I actually work in a shopping center in Fontana. I work at the one between Sierra and Juniper, and I wasn't sure if you were familiar with that particular location.
No, not really.
Just a quick question here. So I have seen your project going on over here. So I was interested to know, like, what are your financial numbers according to you? Like, you see, like, how much would be the investment and what would be your projections? Like, I just want to know how you calculate it, because I'm from an entrepreneur major too. So, yeah.
Okay, well, I would say there's all kinds of different standards, but to simplify some. Wall Street now, the venture capitalists, try to get a 20% internal rate of return. That's pretty risky. And what they're trying to do is they want to invest it with somebody that, a developer or something, the developer wants to make money, but pay them a 20% internal rate. It's pretty damn hard to make a profit with that kind of return, but that's what they're wanting. They'll accept maybe get down to 15%. If you're a shopping center developer, I would say that generically, you would not do a deal that is reasonably not risky at less than, say, a 11 or 12% return. Well, maybe 10%. A guy that you can develop a shopping center now, if you feel interest rates are going to be low, you can develop a shopping center at a 10 cap, and you can sell it very readily at a 6 cap. You're dang near doubling your money. And so it can be very profitable. You're also taking a risk that the interest rates, the cap rates increase. But I would say, for me, I wouldn't do a deal unless it was about 12. The residential developers that are doing tracts won't do deals unless they're north of 12% cap. You understand what cap rates are? Is everybody know that? Okay. If you don't, I'll kind of explain it. In any event, so you need, or let me put it this way, a return. So a person's going to, or companies that build houses, they're going to kind of have maybe 11 or 12. But now, when the market was really strong and there was a shortage of houses back in 2007, they were accepting deals as low as a 7%. So it's never the same. And then when the times got bad, they wouldn't do a deal unless it was north of 16 or 17%. Right now, I would say it would be generically around 12%. And it's kind of hard to make any kind of business work unless you have at least sort of those kind of returns. Yeah, any other questions? Did that answer what you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I've been hearing a lot about green manufacturing and green architects. So I was wondering if that's in the scope of your development.
You know, we're doing it over here a fair amount, partly required, and I'm completely supportive, by California laws. They've gotten pretty stringent. So our windows, all kinds of things are much more energy efficient than they were even a couple of years ago. We haven't gone to the point of being LEED certified, because it really doesn't move up much beyond where we are, and yet to get it costs a lot of money administratively that just doesn't really basically add the energy. It just gets you that certification. We don't need it. But, you know, everybody that I'm working with says, don't do solar, it doesn't make economic sense. But I happen to believe in it very strongly. So what we're doing on this project is I told them, okay, but I want every one of those roofs, I want them all wired. I want it all set up so a year later or whenever I can put solar on there. And so we're setting it up that way. And solar is getting cheaper and cheaper manufactured, and it's getting more efficient. And electric prices are going up. Electricity prices, they've got to. So we've gotten where, you know, that difference is compressing, and I think it's compressing fairly, you know, moderately fast.
I read an article a while back about transparent solar cells that basically can be used to replace windows. So you turn the window into a solar cell.
Yeah, I've heard about that. I haven't looked into it, but I heard about it. Well, they're doing it with buildings. That's on office buildings. They're very innovative. Some of them are doing it. And they're even trying to do it on the skins of buildings. And of course, your warehouses, most of these warehouses, new warehouses, even the old ones, their whole roof is solar. So they're in it because it's so easy for them to do a mass quantity of it at a good price, and you know, be able to, and you've got this unobstructed generally area to build it on. So it's very efficient.
I'm just curious, your investments, you mainly concentrate different type of income levels, like middle class, high class, or do you have any certain criteria what really attracts you to, you know, locate your project in terms of...
I would say that my career, I've done a mixture. I started out with the ghetto, stayed in that for a while, and I would say that all my development has been in, well, I did about 15 shopping centers in Huntington Park, which is a very low economic area. So that was very low, and it worked out quite well. Excluding that, I would say most of my projects have been generally about middle class, but then I've done some that are quite high, custom homes on the beach, things like that. I've done some like that, but mostly around that middle class. So we're looking at a project right now of 70 homes that would be a low middle class, which we're going to try to deliver homes, if we can get the land tied up, probably for $240,000 or $250,000 for a single family on maybe a 1,500 square foot house. We can do it. It's just, you know, so that would definitely be the lower end of the market. So. Okay.
We're at about 7 minutes till 6.
Okay. Well, I'm done. Thank you very much. I hope I didn't, you know, I was talking fast on purpose, but I hope that there was at least a couple of gems that came out that will work for you, and And again, I'm honored that you asked me to come and talk. So,
Thank you, Mr.
Appreciate it.
Watson.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that'll be it for it. And now, thank you all for coming. We know we all have classes, but Mr. Watson is very acceptable. If you have like any further questions or anything like, he's very approachable to be here, like to answer any type of questions. So if you have any further ideas or want to talk to him personally, like he's around sometimes here at
Right.
campus. Yeah, at College of Education, actually, there's the Literary Center, right? At
Right.
the first floor. Like, if you haven't had the opportunity to see it, it's they support a lot the community. And this project here, I think that it's gonna bring some economic developments, more that they're being here and bring some better neighborhood here to the campus. So thank you again for being here. Thank you all.
Are we having a meeting next week?
Yeah, that will be the last one. So our meetings